Have you ever felt like you're not entirely sure what you're trying to achieve with life and you don't have a direction or a purpose to follow? This video might help explain some of that. Hello everyone, my name is Rich Pearson. I'm a professional counsellor and psychotherapist based in Falmouth and Cornwall, and today we are going to be talking about the importance of setting goals. Goals are an aim, a target, a thing that we're trying to achieve. Throughout history, many different philosophers and people have asked the questions, why? What are we trying to do? What are we trying to achieve? Where are we trying to get to? And the unfortunate truth is that unless you believe in a specific religion, nihilism generally wins that argument, because people think, well, what's the point in anything? What's the point in trying? For a lot of the people who might struggle to make goals, that might be a kind of philosophy which you are potentially stuck in, is going, well, what's the point? Nothing's going to matter in the end. To quickly circumvent that before we get too far away from the idea of goals, there is a really good argument against generalized nihilism in terms of the universe. Yes, when everything eventually ends, when total heat death of the universe occurs and all life is extinguished, then yes, technically nothing will matter at that point. But that's not how time works. And things do matter right now. You know that things matter because if you hurt yourself, it hurts. You care about it. It's pain. Your brain doesn't like it. If someone else gets hurt, you quite likely feel bad about that. Suffering is the antithesis to nihilism, basically. We know that things matter because people get hurt. When I first started my counselling training, there was a phrase that was used in one of the admission booklets that stated that a reasonable goal for all of humanity was to try and eradicate suffering in whatever way that we could. And I always thought that was a really good thing, that really made sense. So if you're ever struggling with thinking, what's the point in setting a goal? Think that everyone in humanity has a part to play in trying to reduce the net amount of suffering that there is in the world. If you can think of it like that, then it will help you in order to try and set a goal of any kind, really. So, back to actually setting goals. What are we talking about when we say that we want to set a goal? Well, first of all, we need to break it down a little bit further. We generally break things down into short and long-term goals. So, a long-term goal might be that you want to have a better relationship with someone in your family, your romantic partner, one of your friends or something like that. That's kind of a long-term goal that takes a very long time to measure how you've succeeded in that goal and to define as a success. Short-term goals might be something like, I'm going to go to the gym 2 or 3 times this week. I'm going to use that as a metric for how well I've succeeded. Short-term goals are generally easier to define as to whether or not you've met them, because you can generally say, I'm going to move house by the end of the year. That's relatively easy. If it gets to January 1st and it's next year and you haven't moved house, then you haven't met that goal. What's also really important in terms of goal setting is to make them realistic. Now, there's a thing called SMART, which is an acronym that gets used a lot, which stands for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time constrained. So, in terms of them being specific, again, if you just say your goal is to be a better person, that's not hugely specific. It's a good thing to aim for, but you'd need to break that down, I think, into many other subcategories of how are you going to be a better person? Are you going to be less angry with things? Are you going to donate more to charity? Are you going to change the way that you vote, change the way that you talk to people? Are you going to, I don't know, drive better? Anything. Like, well, a goal has to in some way be specific. If you just say that you're going to be a better person, then that makes the next letter in the acronym quite difficult, which is M, for measurable. How are you going to measure the success of this? And again, in terms of the moving house thing, if you say I'm going to move house this year and you don't, then that's the way that you measure it, and that means that you haven't met that goal. In other ways, you might say, I want to lose weight. Okay, how much do you want to lose? I want to lose, I don't know, a stone in a year. Again, that's something that is, measurable. But is it achievable? And that comes on to the next part of the acronym, A, for achievable. How are you going to do this? Like, is it even something that you can do? Like, is it achievable to say that you're going to lose a stone in a year? For someone like me who weighs about 13 stone, I probably could lose a stone in a year. For someone who's already 8 stone, then that's probably not going to be very achievable. If I set myself the goal that I was going to move house by the end of the year and it was already Christmas when I was making that goal, then that's very, very unlikely. That's just not achievable. And this kind of ties in with the next one, which is R for realistic. Is it realistic that it's going to be able to happen? Achievable is kind of, can you do it? Realistic is kind of, is the rest of the world going to allow you to do it? So in terms of moving house, it's like, it might be achievable in the sense that I'm like, okay, I want to, do this, but I would have to sell my house for a rock bottom price. I wouldn't get a good return on it. The solicitors probably wouldn't be around in order to do all the paperwork and stuff like that. So it's just not realistic in that sense. So that's kind of how I define it. I might be wrong, but this is how I've sort of defined the SMART target kind of thing, in that achievable is whether you can do it, realistic is whether the world is going to let you do it, and then time constrained. What are the time constraints? Like, is this something that is going to take you forever to do? Now, famously, JFK, the American president, said, by the end of this decade, we will land a man on the moon. And unfortunately, he wasn't around to see that because he was assassinated beforehand. But in 1969, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin did walk on the moon. And this was an incredibly ambitious goal to have set. But amazingly, JFK wasn't just speaking in a kind of really hopeful way, which a lot of politicians do. They kind of gamble on things. They say, yeah, it's nice to announce this, but is it actually possible? Turns out it was. So when you think about these goals, think, what is the reasonable amount of time? And one of the great reasons that time is in there and things like money or resources aren't is because time is the one constant it's the one commodity which we all have the same amount of. From you, me, Bill Gates, the guy sleeping outside on the street, to Warren Buffett, everyone has the same 24 hours in a day, and it's down to you what you're going to do with them. So again, SMART targets. Specific, how specific? What you have to make the goal specific so that it's something that is easily contained in the scope of what you're going to try and do. Measurable. How am I going to measure the outcome of what has happened here? Achievable. Can I do it? Realistic. Is the world going to let me do it? And time constrained. Do I have enough time to make this happen? That's a really good way if you've got any goal that you want to achieve. And the problem as well with a lot of goal setting is that a lot of people will go through their lives not having a goal or believing that the goals are preordained for them. Now, I've spoken about this many times before. When I was younger, there was a kind of idea that there was a sort of a predestined kind of set of goals for everyone. You went to school, you got a decent education, you went to university, you got a degree, you got a job, you paid taxes, you got married, you had kids, you retired, and you died. And that was kind of the goal that was sort of set out. And I remember being really quite depressed in school and thinking it was quite bleak, trying to think about like, what was I going to do, because that didn't sound like the kind of life that I wanted to have. So it's really good to be able to sit down and ask yourself, what is a goal that I want to set? What do I actually want to achieve from life? And is this my goal? Is it something that I actually want to do, or is it something that my parents or my teachers or my boyfriend or girlfriend or anything else, or that society just expects of me? I know people who have had kids, and having kids is a really big goal, but they've had kids not because they actually wanted to, but just because they thought it's what they should do. And that's a really difficult situation to end up in when you've committed to something as big as having a child, bringing a person into the world, and realizing it wasn't your goal. It wasn't something that you actually wanted to achieve. So it's really, really important. And this is a really big thing in counseling. Goal setting is sitting down and saying, what are we trying to achieve from this? What are we trying to get out of this? And anytime I have a new counselling client, within the first or second session, I will say to them, okay, I've got to know you. I understand some of the reasons that have brought you to counselling, but you tell me, what are we trying to achieve here? You've come to counselling telling me that you're depressed. Okay, what is the goal? Because if the goal is to not be depressed, That's not really specific enough. How do we make this into something that is more specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, time constrained? How do we do that? So that's a basic explanation of goal setting in a counselling and real world environment using the sort of SMART acronym as a way of helping along with that. I really hope you've enjoyed this video. If you'd like to see more like this, please feel free to subscribe. And if you'd like me to cover any topics that I haven't gone over yet, I've got a bunch more that I'm going to do, but please feel free to put them in the comments below. Let me know what you'd like me to address and talk about. And yeah, apart from that, I hope you're all having a lovely day, and I'll see you all tomorrow for the next video. Thanks very much.